You started? Okay. All right, this is the March Aero Club safety meeting for October. And hopefully we can make it through this thing. Tonight's meeting is not going to be the most exciting in the world, but it is necessary. We're going to talk about refueling again. There's still seems to be a few people that are kind of not sure what to do when they're refueling airplanes. But we're also going to talk about the safety grant that we got for October. I don't know how many of you have read it or looked at it. It's hanging up on the next to our sign-in computer, the one that you check the airplane out on. And we're going to quickly go through that too. So tonight, hopefully we can get some things done. However, the first thing we do is we usually do a little typical plan that we do here is we have new people who are in the club, and that includes people that are in process of joining to stand up and introduce themselves and you know, how come you joined the club and that type of thing. So Colonel, you can be the first one if you don't mind.
What's on the spot?
Yeah, there's not too many new people in here now.
I'm Jim Hosey, previous 30 years in the Air Force, retired out of Westover Air Reserve Base as a vice wing commander. Spent 15 years with the Part 91 operation. You might have heard of the company, CVS Pharmacy, running that flight department. Just arrived here 2.5 weeks ago with my wife. She's the 452nd MSG commander, Colonel Kelly Hosey, and looking to join your group here and happy to be here. Thanks.
Okay. Get familiar with his face because I'm going to abuse him. He is a safety person who is the safety person for corporate. Yeah, and so I'm going to be using some of his stuff. He may be standing up here too, so you don't have to look at my ugly face. Okay, anybody else that's new, that hasn't been to this meeting before, or have we gotten you before?
Yes.
I don't remember if we did, but
I
don't
signed
lie. Well, I know you signed, but have you been introduced during the meeting? Yeah, I think you had. Who else? Let's see. Well, we got some old timers and people who haven't been around for a while. Okay, I think we got everybody. What? Oh yeah, the cameraman. Yeah. Oh, come on. Oh, okay. All right. You gotta find the right computer. Okay, new pilot ratings. Has anybody soloed? Has anybody gotten a rating lately since before we had the last meeting? Has anybody been violated by the FAA? Carolyn?
Violated.
No, okay. Anybody soloed recently? Garrett? Is anybody in here soloed recently?
No, not really. Hopefully next week.
Hopefully next week, okay. Well, all right. Okay, experiences. This is where you can stand up and talk a little bit about your experiences. Don't worry, we won't do anything to you if you say something that's might be questionable. Anything that's been exciting. Not exciting. This includes Air Force people and other military. It isn't just the Aero Club or or the Air Force. It can be anything that's taken place.
I have a question, Roger.
Yeah.
What are the names of the new waypoints?
Oh, good grief, you would ask me that.
Because I have no idea what they are. So I
Yeah,
just
I
tell
know.
them Skechers Building now.
How about Bob address that?
Read the Marty.
Yeah, you can.
Read the Marty.
Now that you asked me, I just lost him.
I really just want to know the one to the east.
That's going to be, was it Crest?
I'm trying to remember.
Ridgecrest is east, Box Springs is up at the Big M, and out to the west it's going to be Three Sisters.
Thank you.
And Lake Paris is a reporting point now.
Lake Paris is. Okay,
Yeah, down south.
okay.
Non-binding.
Ridgecrest. That's kind of Ridgecrest.
Yeah, Jason, you've been flying a lot. You should remember those.
So I do remember all of them.
Okay. Anybody else that has anything to offer to the club? If not, we'll move on. Aero Club manager, he will be standing up and talking. He did forget his notes though, so hopefully it won't be as long as normal. Oh, good grief. Oh, gee. Okay, we're gonna go over the October safety gram real quick, and then we're gonna go into know your SOPs, which basically is in-depth knowledge of the refueling here at March, and it's gonna be, we're gonna quickly go over it. This is one of the reasons why I didn't make this into a wings meeting tonight, because basically we're talking about internal here, so it doesn't do anybody necessarily good from the outside to be looking at what we do here. Okay, so Bob, you're up. Try not to take too long.
He's been gone for a week and I was gone yesterday, so I got a long cleaning.
I just got back from Chicago, so.
Number of things I just want to cover. Cleaning of aircraft, don't forget, it's not only the windscreen and the struts for the Cessna, but if the belly looks bad, we need to take and clean that. The stuff is in the connects out by the fueling hose. For maintenance, 03 November has the ADSB installed. The next airplane will be a T-34, and as soon as we're done, probably next week, we'll take and send that out for about a five-day upgrade for an ADSB for the T-34. 15 Foxtrots still in the hangar. And what we're doing here is that the strut is so worn out and it's causing so much shimmy. Even with new bushings in the scissors, it's not going to help anything. So we have a new strut going on. We're still putting bushings in the scissors, and that's going to tighten it up and eliminate a lot of that shimmy. And the same thing is going to be taking place in the T-34. So we're going to have to look at the T-34s also in regards to bushings and upgrade some of that stuff. In the parking, the very first spot should be the 182. The 182 is now parked in the second spot, so whoever parked 29 Foxtrot in the first spot, don't do that please, because the 182 is the heaviest. It's 2,800 pounds versus the 1,900 pounds for the T-41A. So let's take and use the first spot for the T-30, the 182, starting on the second spot for the T-41As when you park and place you up here to that. Credit cards, if you haven't got the raised numbers or the indentations on your credit card, we have a credit card slip, and the very top of the line says no name or do not write above that line. That's where the credit card number goes. It's not to be left blank. People are putting the credit card number below that and then a name below that. So when you run the credit card, then the imprint for the Aero Club goes over the name. It leaves a mess. We're going to have a little contest here for some prizes, and I think I have that on the back end. For schedules. This goes to all the instructors. If you have a scheduled time, we'll say between 2 and 4, be back before 4 so the next person isn't going to be late. What happens when we start getting late, we start pushing things further back. The last person that's flying, and is Jerry here tonight yet? No. What takes place is that by the time the last person gets in that aircraft, he's up to 40 minutes late, and that's not correct because his time was supposed to start, we'll say at 4:30. And don't forget, starting with daylight saving, as we already see now, 4:30 is going to be the end of daylight savings. Still comes the middle of December. It's not the middle, not daylight saving, but sunset.
We're going the normal time.
Sunset.
Yeah.
We're going the normal time, I believe, the 3rd of November, which is Saturday. So try and start early. Try and get back early for the next individual. And that's all I have right now. And then at the end of our presentation here tonight, I have some prizes and I have some questions, and those people who can answer it correctly will get some prizes. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bob. Okay. We get, every month, we get from headquarters Aero Clubs, a safetygram. The safetygram is from their, basically like my boss, in San Antonio, Texas. He's the one that who does the safetygram, and they're sometimes really good. Recently, they've been doing some pretty good ones here, where they've been giving you scenarios of plane crashes that have taken place and reading over them and then kind of looking at it on your own and answering some questions that he gives. I will show some of this where on a 172 that did crash, and the subject on this particular one is talking about your checklist and checklist discipline. One of the things that was ingrained into us in the Air Force was that checklist discipline was absolutely vital. And there were times where we got interrupted while we're in the middle of the pre-flight, especially us flight engineers. And Ward back there can verify that, because you don't have to hide. And we'd be out doing our pre-flight, and we would get interrupted all the time. And so the way you ran that checklist was extremely important, because you get interrupted, and the next thing you know, where was I? Or do you remember? Or did you skip an item? Or what do you do? Well, that's what this thing here is about. The question that they ask on this safetygram here is on this accident report that happened to this 172, where they got interrupted on the checklist leading to a crash. And one of the questions is, why I go over the scenario real quick, is should you interrupt an open checklist? If yes, do you return to the point of interruption or go back to the very beginning? If no, what actions would you have taken if you were the pilot in the scenario that we're about to look at? Is it acceptable to omit items in a checklist? Well, I know what I'd say. Oh, there's Jerry. Jerry, you can sign in too. Okay. The accident took place in Rosemont, California, and it's a Cessna 172K. And flight control system malfunction, they call it, /fail. Yeah, we don't have to read all. I'll try to go over what happened. Basically, he had 3 people in the airplane, including himself. The other 2 were not pilots. They took off from point A to point B. Everything was non-eventful. He keeps his airplane in a hangar at his home base. And he never uses a lock for his flight controls. Now that's what he says afterwards. So anyhow, they took off, they went to point B, ate their $100 hamburger, came back out to the airplane, they started taxiing back out to the runway for takeoff, and he was running the checklist, before takeoff checklist. And he all of a sudden realized that his fuel, which probably he read it because the checklist told him to, he noticed that one tank was higher than the other one. Well, that being an unusual thing, for at least for him, I know sometimes we've run into it here a couple of times, but you know, for those of you who are reading it, let me know if I make a mistake in the scenario. But he turned off the engine, stopped his checklist, everything, and got out to actually physically measure the tanks to make sure that they were reading correctly and that he had enough fuel. Now, how many here would raise their hand and say that he did correctly doing that? You think he did that right? Getting, shutting down the engine and going out and checking his tanks because he had a doubt? I mean, I would say, yeah. He did okay there. The problem was he got back in the airplane again, started the engine, taxied out, took off, got about halfway down the runway and 20 feet in the air and realized that the airplane was not climbing and that he had left the gust lock in the yoke. So he chopped the throttle, came back down on the runway again, but there wasn't enough runway for him to be able to stop, so he ran at the end of the runway, and according to the NTSB, it was substantial damage to the airplane. Okay, nobody got hurt, nobody got killed or anything like that, but for undetermined reasons, the pilot omitted those items for the 2 places on that checklist where he checks to see that the gust lock has been removed. Okay, so those 2 items on that checklist would have prevented that happening. Now, there was a couple of other things going on there too. He also used a mini iPad for his GPS. Well, guess where that is on your yoke? It's right there, so he couldn't see behind that. Number 2, he kept his airplane in a hangar, and he told the NTSB that he never ever put the gust lock in the airplane when he was hangared it, because it was inside of a hangar. Why do you need to do that? I don't know. How many here have an airplane? Bob? Okay. Do you?
No, but I checked the controls prior to takeoff.
No. No. Yeah, so there were several factors involved in this thing. Let me go to the next page. He also installed the gust lock backwards. Okay, and I know you guys with the Cessnas, when you have the gust lock in, there's a little red flag that covers over the top of where the key goes. And of course, if you install it backwards, that won't happen. So there was like, what, 3 items that just caught him? Right. You know, he missed those 2 items on the checklist, and actually 4 items because there was the iPad in the way, and then the other one was the gust lock was in backwards.
How do you fly down there with the gust lock on?
We didn't fly, he had it out. He didn't have it in when he took off from his initial point A. You know, he flew from point A to point B, and when he didn't put the gust lock in because he could pull it out of his hangar. So he didn't have a gust lock. But when he got to the other end of the go do the $100 hamburger, he put the gust lock in. But he didn't know he put it in backwards. That's what he told the NTSB. So, I hope that some of you guys can see what happened here. It's kind of obvious that there was, checklists. The Air Force always told us basically that, you use the checklist no matter what, and if you got interrupted, us flight engineers used to have certain times where we got interrupted, but there was a place on the checklist that we would run it until we got to a logical break, a conclusion, so that when you restarted that checklist, you came back to that place. You may end up recovering everything. Uh-oh, no, it's the other one down here. It's this. It's that thing. Okay, here we go. And it takes a few minutes. Anyhow, so, whenever we used to do, sometimes if it takes having to start from the beginning of your checklist, then do it. I mean, for crying out loud, in the T-41A and the C model, and even the T-34s, it's not that big of a deal. Just start all over again. That's my suggestion as a safety officer. When Ward and I were flying the 141, we have a checklist this thick, but in these airplanes, it's a pretty thin book, even though I charge a lot of money to sell it to you. So,
But also report on the previous page, show that you didn't use the checklist. You go back to the previous page.
Well, that's a
You look
big
down
page.
here. You look down here and it says, here, I'll find it.
Yeah, but
Well, it talks about the checklist,
Yeah.
operational checklist of not checking the flight controls, which is on the
Yeah.
manufacturer's checklist.
yeah, he said he used the manufacturer's checklist, which was fine, but the problem is if you don't use it correctly, then it doesn't do you a whole lot of good. I knew a guy that did not believe in using checklists at all. And unfortunately, he's now dead because he didn't believe in doing pre-flights, any of that stuff. And one day he took off and something on the empennage in the back of the airplane came off, and that was it. And so it doesn't make any sense. This isn't like jumping in your car, and actually your car you're supposed to check things too. That's another subject in itself, but an airplane, you're up in the air. You know, it doesn't make sense to not do the things that we have learned over the last 100 years of flying airplanes now that work and what doesn't work. We've got a lot of history of plane crashes, and I love the way AOPA puts it. We don't live long enough to learn everything that a person makes a mistake in. So we learn it off people that have accidents and see, and then hopefully we will learn it from that. Any questions? Okay, let's see, NTSB, they came down and they said that the pilot's improper use of the control lock combined with his incomplete execution of 2 pre-departure procedures, which resulted in a takeoff with the control lock installed. I was going to download the video. I know you guys have seen it, where it's a de Havilland, I think it is. It was back when they first came out with the twin-engine, smaller. I don't remember which airplane it was, but we talked about it this morning, where he left the control lock and on a test flight, and they got videos of it because they were taking videos of and he just went right up just like that. It just came right on in and right into the ground. And they found that the gust lock was still in the elevator part. And it was just nuts, you know, you just like, I don't know, I automatically run the controls through. Automatically. I mean, it's just something that is ingrained. And I could tell you some stories about the 141 too, but I won't do that now. Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, real quick, we're going to run over just the refueling operations again. I know that we went through this in April. That was about 6 months ago, so I'm going to do it again. Because I get concerned sometimes about people falling off that ladder out there. Because of that, Bob and I are going to buy one of those ladders that I got one at my house. It's metal legs and everything, but the part that you step on is plastic, a real hard plastic, and it's much more stable. And we're going to do that because the ladder that you got, that you do use right now, so far we haven't had any incidences with it. I haven't had anybody tell me that they almost fell off that ladder, but I find that kind of hard to believe that somebody hasn't almost done so, especially if the reel starts rolling back up on you when you're up on the wing. You guys that fly the T-34s don't have to worry about that stuff because you're down here. But on those Cessnas, yeah, high wing. Okay, in the SOPs, it's in Chapter 5. Specifically paragraph 5.2.4. All refueling operations will, of course, comply with the regulation, which is our 34.117. The base also has a regulation too, okay? And when Ward and I were doing the 141, we had to comply with that too. Refueling operations will not be accomplished when thunderstorms are reported within 5 miles. We just had that going on here about, well, a month ago now, where we did have some thunderstorms out here. And I think it was Jerry that came back off a flight, and I don't know if it was you or not. I like to blame you, Jerry, on everything, because a lot of times you're not here and I can do that. But yeah, just simply, if first off, when you're coming back in, you probably should already know you got thunderstorms. The tower is supposed to be telling you this, and even when you're taxiing back in. So 5 miles for the thunderstorms. Each aircraft will be serviced, including fuel, oil, and cleaning of the windscreens. Every once in a while I get a complaint with somebody coming in complaining about the airplane being dirty when they go out initially to fly. Well, that's part of that is because the person isn't fulfilling this paragraph in the SOPs. You are at the very least do the windscreens, at the very least. It really helps a lot to the next guy that takes the airplane. A fire extinguisher will be available when you're refueling. There is one that's out there. It's owned by the Air Force. We have them all distributed throughout the flight line out there. They are supposed to be up to date, although sometimes I wonder about the fire department and their procedures, because they keep having a guy that's supposed to be doing that and then they leave or quit or something like that, and so it's kind of confusing there. A ladder will be used when you're doing a Cessna or a high wing. You must do a ladder. Of course, you got to, because you can't get up there. What that's in there for is that we have had airplanes that's had the little step, on the side of the, right just forward of the door. Even those airplanes, you still use a ladder. You don't try to stand on that step trying to refuel. Any questions so far?
Is there a procedure if we're out there on the ramp to tell us if there's lightning in 5?
What was the question?
Is there a procedure that tells us that there's lightning within
We get a
5?
call from operations saying there's lightning within 5 miles, and then with that, everything's shut down, and you'll be notified by the individuals from
So
the
if you're
club.
all alone on a Sunday, no one's in the office,
Yeah,
how do you know? Do they call it out?
they're supposed to call it out.
Okay.
Yeah. I had them call it out one time when I came back, and they told me on the radio as I was taxiing in,
That's how we've
thunderstorms
always
were
been
in.
notified, because we've always had radio.
Yeah.
If we're out there pre-flighting or fueling.
Oh, well, yeah.
turn it off, and
Yeah.
we're not talking to anybody.
If
Yeah.
you're flying during an
It's-
electrical thunderstorm, you shouldn't be doing it because we've had severe winds, especially out of the Hemet area, and we shut down anyway. So if you're trying to fly in that kind of weather, you're really out of place.
Yeah. Typically, I know that when we went out to the airplane, we would have refueling, the refueling people would not come out because they would get notified. But, like Ward is right, we're out there by ourselves, we don't have somebody to do that. Now, obviously, if you got a thunderstorm within 5 miles, you probably will know it.
Because it's fast moving, you started fueling, and the
Yeah.
thing's coming, and all of a sudden the first lightning goes off, now they call it.
Yeah.
Stop, how do they tell you?
Yeah, they,
Come over the voice,
yeah.
right? Tell you
The only-
PA.
I would, if I were you and I saw something like that happening, I would get on the phone and call, or the radio. That's, if you're out there on a Sunday afternoon, nobody's there, although the clearing official should be there. Yes, Robert, what's that? ATIS? Not for thunderstorms necessarily, because ATIS is only done once an hour. And what if there was no thunderstorm, when he did the recording? Now, you just have to be very much situationally aware of what's going on. If it looks like there's going to be thunderstorms there, I know I would be finding out, especially if it looks like it's getting close. Because Bob and I have been out there when we've had storms come in here, and they come in like crazy. I mean, they're fast. And I'm telling you, and Ward, you're right, you can't tell if it's 5 miles or not.
Well, I've been in the C-17 where pre-flight, and all of a sudden the crew chiefs come running in and close the door.
Yeah.
Lights
Yeah.
are fine.
Yeah,
What the heck?
yeah, it's a good question. Yes, sir.
Roger, does the Aero Club provide gloves for fueling, or is that
I
up
put
to
some
the
out there.
individual?
There's some rubber gloves in there.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some rubber gloves in the yellow.
We don't provide it, that's been a donation to the club.
Yeah, that was a donation, yeah, yeah. No, Ward, that's a good question, it really is. I mean, as flight engineers, we know, because we've been out on these airplanes in the 141, literally in some places that are out in the middle of nowhere, on some island someplace, you know, and we had no communication with anybody that knew what was going on around us. So a lot of times we as flight engineers have to be very discerning as to what's around us on an airplane, especially on a 141. Let's see. Oh, yeah. All right, the stages, of course, for refueling is taxi to refuel, set up, refueling, post-refueling, and emergencies. I want to definitely get to the emergency part because that's a lot of people probably don't realize. Okay, now, this is something that we would like to see is to have taxi up to the limit line. There is a limit line there, believe it or not, even though it's faded away. We've been trying to get John Law to go out there and paint a new one, but he's not been real cooperative about that.
Just make it 25 feet in your can.
If somebody feels up to it, it would be nice if you volunteer. You know, this is a club.
You're familiar with the concrete, Roger.
Yeah. Most of you who fly all the time are familiar. Some of the newer people may not be. You'll have to learn that. And hopefully, whoever checks you new people out when the airplane, the instructor will show you where it's at.
What's the distance?
What's that?
What is the distance?
I think that's about 50 feet or
Supposed
so.
to be 50, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Remember all those concrete lines out there? They're 25-foot squares out there.
Yeah, that's right.
So 2
That's right.
squares away from that thing is 50 feet.
It's 50 feet. Yeah.
The Air Force in its infinite wisdom managed to pull all those things 25 foot.
So that, yeah, actually that was for wingtip clearance too, which was one of the biggies the Air Force is into. So, you know, you come up and do this. Now, the other day we had an individual that came in and parked the airplane sideways. And the reason why the individual did that was because they wanted to make sure that they could taxi the airplane back to parking because it was the 182. And the 182 is heavy. And a lot of you that's flown it know that. Now, somebody like Jason over here, he can probably handle that, but most of
just coasted.
yeah, you just coast in, yeah. You're not supposed to go straight into that tank. Even if you do like the individual did, turn the airplane sideways, don't go straight into that tank because what if something happens, your brakes go out? Our maintenance here is good, but not necessarily always, you know, the brakes could go out. So if you choose to do that, just make sure that you have the clearance, okay? Because I know if you're out there by yourself and it's a Sunday afternoon, like Ward is saying, you're by yourself. You're going to be the one that has to get that airplane back to parking. Just be very cautious about what you're doing. Watch your right wing, okay? Now, there's a couple of reasons why I don't like doing that, and we'll come up to that in just a second here. All right, so the limit line, you go there, and then you pull to the pump using the tow bar. And this individual right there is pulling the airplane forward. And you pull it right up to that little, yeah, I lost my laser, so I don't have it. But anyhow, put the nose wheel right up against that parking brick, whatever you call them. Yeah, I don't even know what you call them
I don't
with a
think you
car.
want to do that. I think you want to have it 2 or 3 feet back, put a chalk down, because otherwise you almost don't have room around the prop to get back on the other
Okay.
side.
Okay, and that's a good point. One of the things that we have to do with this is that hose, you got to get it to the airplane, okay? And that prop there, how many of here has hit their head on that prop? I know maybe you don't want to admit it, but it does hurt, yes. And you gotta be really careful. And you're pulling that hose out, and that hose can be a little unstable, to say the least. So when you're pulling that hose out, just be really, really careful what you do, because you can hit the prop, or the hose to the prop. Yeah. And so what you gotta do is that you just have to be really careful. Okay? Again, situational awareness.
Are we gonna leave the 5,000 feet of hose still on there? I mean, it's really long. It
Talk to your boss,
doesn't need to be that
my
long.
boss.
When I get a chance, I'll get it, I've
Yeah.
already got some stuff I want to put on it.
Well, see, what's good about that is that we can park the airplane 5,000 feet out and just pull it out there. You know, that's,
You know, Marlon,
yeah,
Get
but
my
I
tip
know.
tanks for the extra hose.
That was on there because of the air show, so it's been on there a long time. I know, well, I think we talked to David once, but I don't, he said that's not his job, so. Yeah, so, basically, yeah.
Ain't my job, I'm just a man.
Well, yeah, Bob's just the manager, so,
Yeah, I checked with the club clerk, he ought to be on it.
yeah, yeah. If, we used to have a member here, it used to be the chief of civil engineering on this base, and he used to do everything for us. Oh my goodness, we had a mate. I mean, he came out here and changed nozzles for us, he did all kinds of stuff. But, you know, he retired, and then now it's out to contracts, and contracting people aren't gonna do anything for you. So he basically, you know, Jerry, who knew him, he's left the club now because he's living back east now. So he doesn't have time to come out here or the money. So anyhow, enough said on that. Okay, chalk the main gear, biggie. Make sure you put, what are you laughing at? Yes, that's me. Chalk the back of the wheel, okay? And because when you're leaning up on that wing, guess what? The airplane might start rolling backwards, and then guess what? Okay, chalk the wheel. T-34s probably don't have to worry about it as much. I don't know. You guys, you know, the airplane with a low wing like that isn't. The biggest danger of any of this is the high wing airplane. Okay, right there, on that door, that's the front door to the Aero Club. That's where the fuel log is. Okay, today, I think it was either, you know, Dunn or, I don't know if it was Martindale or not that found it hanging with the airplane. That board right there was hanging with the airplanes. It goes right there. When you go inside, the key is right next to it. It's hanging right there on the picture. Oh, gee. Yeah. So, anyhow.
See you. Yeah, I have prizes.
So you get the clipboard and you go out to the meter, and if this thing ever comes back up again, okay, here we go. All right, make sure that you ground the airplane. Who fixed that today? Somebody,
Nice long grounding wire.
yeah, somebody fixed that.
Randy took the old one, I mean, the new one apart and fixed it. and put
Was it you, Randy? Well, yeah, take the credit. Yeah.
all I really,
Yeah.
all I really want to hear you say, Roger, is tell everybody that when you pull it out 30 feet, you don't just let it go
Let it go.
back in, or when
Yes.
you're replacing it again. Walk it
Yes.
in.
You gotta walk it.
Yeah, walk it back in, please.
Let's sit scrape on the ground, that causes sparks.
Yeah, that's true. It could, although I'm not sure if it's,
And it's not gonna hurt anything, because you're all done with your fueling when you disconnect it.
yeah, but then it hurts the grounding wire.
But it wears it out.
It wears it out, yes. So ground the airplane, make sure you ground it on metal to metal, like on there, it's got the picture of the exhaust. Okay, ladder, that's the old ladder, we still have that ladder. We'll get the new one here pretty soon.
Ladder is L-A-D-D-E-R?
Is that what it is? You know,
How late do you want us to place it?
that is, you know, I've used this slide for the last 5 years, or no, a little bit longer than that. And you're the first person to do that.
It's been longer than that. The rest of us.
Yeah. So, you actually paid attention this time. Good, good. Okay. Meter, all right. The story about this is that you turn that knob on the right to set it to 0. Every once in a while I can tell when I check the fuel log, I can tell when somebody has not done that. And what happens is that I look at how much gas the person prior to them put in there and double the amount of gas that's in the next one. And you go, okay, they didn't turn the thing. That's why I would rather have you use, oh, get away from me. See the little numbers, you can see, I'll show you, I have a better view later on this. The little numbers up there is what you're supposed to be using, not the big numbers. It can actually be off 1/10 each time. The little numbers is where you're supposed to use and put in, and you notice that in the fuel log, that is what's in there, is the little numbers. So that's what you're supposed to use. Okay, you pull the hose out, make sure it latches. I know sometimes this thing becomes a pain in the neck, but try to make sure that that doesn't get to a point where it will reel up on you, when you're, especially if you're up on the ladder. But even you guys with the T-34, you know, it's nothing more frustrating than getting out there and the thing starts reeling up on you. That's that little pawl thing that comes up and goes right into the teeth to keep it from turning. Okay, you turn on the pump. Of course, you got to remove the lock, which is on that keychain. And then get up there and you start refueling. Now, this nozzle here that we had, technically we're supposed to have a little grounding wire connected to the nozzle. However, it's an option. It actually says that in the regulation. You don't have to have it. So, what we have to do is that you get up there to the fueling cap. Before you do any refueling at all, you take the tip of the nozzle and touch the side of, after the cap has been taken off, the side of the refueling dispenser, or refueling receptor, and before you pull the trigger. And once you've done that, the plane is grounded to the nozzle. And let me see what we got. The nozzle will stay in contact with the spout until your refueling is complete. So don't sit there and hold the nozzle up. I don't think anybody here would do that unless you got somebody here that doesn't, you know, pay attention. If wearing Nomex flight suit, you must assure grounding with the hand on the aircraft grounding connector. Okay, these are the guys that do wear flight suits. Okay, Nomex flight suits. You've got to touch. You have to ground yourself out. One of the things that we did in the Air Force, if we left the jet and came back while they were still refueling the airplane, we had to go over to the grounding wire and touch it before we got on the airplane. And that's because of what this is saying here. No ignition within 50 feet. I don't think we have too many people here we have to worry about that with, unless you're trying to, you know, set a fire or something. As mentioned, the SOPs, thunderstorms within 5 miles. Okay, post-refueling. Okay, one of the things that you want to do is turn off the pump. Don't leave the pump running when you're trying to roll up the hose. And that's just a safety issue. Because when you're walking back, there is always that possibility of you accidentally grabbing the nozzle and opening it. And it, you know, you could be dumping fuel out on the ramp. EPA is very, very nosy about this stuff out here, and they're always watching this. I mean, well, They claim they're watching us. I don't think they really are, but we have been threatened, okay? Because they're very, they want to make sure that we don't get an ounce of fuel in the air or on the ground. And so just turn off the pump.
Does anybody know what the second switch is for?
The light makes it dark.
Light, yeah. And we do have a working light, thanks to,
Ken Bennett?
was it Ken or I thought it was Jerry, I'm not Jerry Rolls, Jerry, Kearns.
Ken Bennett.
So anyhow, then roll up the hose. Any questions? To the left, that yellow there is the grounding wire. Please just take it up real easy, okay? Don't let it go. Okay. Read the meter. Again, the small numbers up on the top, that's what you're supposed to use. Use that as what you write down in the fuel log. Now, real quick side note here.
Except, what do we do with the number if it's in the half?
Oh, yeah, well, that's what I was gonna head to, but you go ahead.
Wait.
Yeah, if the number is in the half, in other words, it's just about halfway and the next number is starting to come up on the far right-hand side, you put down the next largest number.
Round up.
Round up, okay? I have seen some people don't do that, and you can see it when I check the log. Round up, okay? The other thing is, if for some reason you make a mistake or something goes wrong or you miscalculate something, especially if it's only going to be a gallon or so, it's off. If it's going into our airplanes, it doesn't matter. Where it matters is if somebody's buying fuel. So like Bob, he comes up and buys fuel, he's paying for it. Now it really needs to be right on and exact where he buys the fuel so that we don't overcharge him. Although it's fun to do that sometimes, but with Bob, that is. I won't do it to anybody else. But in our own airplanes, if you, like the T-34s, you guys come back from a flight, I mean, if for some reason you run over and you're not exactly on, well, okay, just give it to the next airplane, because it's internal, it's us, it's, it might be off a little bit as far as how I turn it in, because I have to turn all this stuff into the Air Force at the end of the month, and they want to see all this. But as long as it's within our own airplanes, that's great, But for some of you guys that are involved where somebody's coming in and buying fuel or something, then you need to be right on. So that, I just thought I'd just bring that up real quick. Okay, record it. I know that some of you guys, there is one thing I want to bring up on this. When you guys, especially in the T-34s, when you guys come back, try to keep it in an order, okay? Last month, I think one of you came in first, and somehow it was out of order. The numbers on the thing was written for a spot below, and the airplane next that came in had their numbers out of order. So,
But the last one was right?
the last one was right, yeah. But yeah, Ward. It worked it out, but I have a lot to do when I'm doing, especially end of month. And having to sit there and try to work that out was not exactly fun. Well, actually, it was fun. It was challenging, but still.
The problem we have when we start doing this is that we're checking the fuel usage against the aircraft. And then when you start going back to research, you're eating up labor in regards to this and therefore denying us in completing something else. And because that's important in regards to our reporting, we need to have the stuff in order.
Okay, and try to write legibly, okay? Most of you do, but, Word, I wish you, never mind. No, yeah, you do okay. Some of you, though, I have found that you kind of, you know, just try to write perfectly. Okay, replace the ladder, lock it up.
Not the former.
No, not the ladder, but the latter, okay? People do steal things out there. Okay, if you use oil, put it in the proper place. That barrel that's right next to the yellow thing there, that barrel is where an empty oil can goes, okay? Not in the trash can. Again, EPA, if they ever caught us, you know, we almost got in trouble one time with one of our members, and he come walking into the office. It just happened to be that the EPA inspector was in our office. I mean, you know, we never have those people here. But no, she just happened to be here that day. And one of our members comes walking in with a big old can of oil and throws it on the ground. And I'm going, oh my gosh, no. And sure enough, she said something. And I don't remember how we got written up or not. But anyhow, try to be clean, try to remember EPA regulations, try to remember everything in the whole world. The oil is in that flammable, or the building there, it says flammable. That's where the other new oil is at. Please record it. We're not getting recording of oil. See that barrel there? It's in, even in this picture here, and this was taken a few months back. How many cans are in that barrel? And yet, when I count up the total amount of oil put in an airplane, it doesn't come anywhere near as many cans are in that barrel. Not anywhere near it. So people are not recording it in the computer inside the office. It needs to be recorded there. And I won't carry that any further.
It's the only indication you have in regards to oil usage is what the engine is doing, and is it getting tired, or is it going to come up with a failure? So you people are flying it, and if you want to put down 0, that's fine with me. The engine quits, it's off my back. I'm being honest with you. But for us to have oil usage is very important as to when that engine is going to be pulled off that aircraft.
Okay, emergency shut-off, very important in case anything happens, like a fire or anything like that. Okay, you'll notice that's the front of the Aero Club, the main door that you go in. Okay, notice the building behind it. Okay, and I forgot the name, I forgot the number. It's right up there. It's building 3. Oh, gee, I can't read it. Ours is, yeah, ours is building 300.
55.
I mean 355. The building that you see in the background is the customs building. Okay, that's where our emergency shutoff is at that building. I will take you there. Okay, that's the customs building, and you'll notice on the upper picture on the right-hand side, and then the lower picture on the right, lower picture, is where the shutoff box is. And inside that box, you open it up, and it says Aero Club in there, and you just, that shuts off the fuel flow out to the pump.
It shuts off electricity. Shuts off.
Well, shut off, okay, it does shut off power, yes. Well, yeah. And actually, then of course, hopefully, it doesn't do anything as far as getting fuel pumped out. But anyhow, any questions as far as where this is located at? Okay, that's John Law and with a student. Okay, I'm done with my part unless we got questions, and we even have 3 minutes to spare. Okay.
Take a few minutes here. Okay, for the quiz and the prizes, or the prize, how many different oils does the Aero Club use?
3.
3. Can you name them?
1, 2, and 3.
Right.
Mineral 20.
You don't get a prize, Richard.
Mineral oil, regular oil, and
Multi-plin?
Multi-oil.
Okay, come up and you can get one of these things up here. You guys can walk up here and take your pick. You get one. These are the neck coolers. They're red and blue.
Right.
You take and wet them, stick them on your neck when it gets hot, and it'll keep you a lot cooler.
I like it too.
So those people who raised their hands said they had the answer, you can get them all three of you. Okay, Richard, and who else? Back here.
Well, yes,
Everybody's gonna get one, so you might as well come up here. See, I had you all.
We're gonna keep asking till they're gone.
Okay. What weights are used in the T41A and C? What weight oil is used in the T41 Charlie and Alpha?
2050.
Wrong.
50.
That's why there's a chart inside the little orange container.
50 weight. Okay. What oil are we using in the 182? 2050 multi-weight, right. How about the T34s?
Depends upon which airplane.
Right, what are they?
That's why there's a chart inside the box.
The chart's not right.
1, 2, and 3.
570 uses 2050 and all the other ones use straight 50.
Unless we got mineral oil in which one?
Just 5.6.
5.6, got mineral oil. Mineral oil only, okay. Where can you find a credit card example for filling out credit cards?
Right above the credit card box thingy.
That's right. So we mentioned about the errors in it. There's a gouge there. If you don't know how to fill it out, look at the red and just fill it out like it's supposed to be. Really appreciate it.
Actually,
What?
I have it's wrong.
Well, it's not wrong.
There's an arrow point of, somebody drew in a black arrow to say where the credit card numbers are supposed to be. The credit card numbers that are on that sheet are below that line.
I'll have to look at it.
Yes.
Okay. Where are extra utilization sheets kept for the aircraft in regards to marking down your flight time, your hobs, and et cetera?
In the small briefing area to the south of the,
Around the corner where the simulator computer is?
yes.
That's right. Okay. How about fuel logs? So we run out of a fuel log, where are they found?
You're out of gas.
Well, they're in the bottom left-hand drawer, and it's called logs. It's in a brown folder, about halfway back when you open up the drawer, and you can find extra fuel logs in there. Most of the time we keep spares behind in the fuel log itself, so there's always a spare behind. And if it gets down to where you're on the last sheet, notify somebody so we can replace it. But that's where the spares are kept. Can anybody guess how much flight time we flew last year?
No.
750.
Wrong. Higher. Higher. We flew 1,408 hours last year. That's a lot of flight time. How many hours did we fly in August? 143? Pretty low.
Close, well, but you were close.
Anybody else? 195 hours were flown in August with the introductory programs put out by marketing out of Veranda. That's probably the highest that the club has ever flown since I've been here for 11 and a half years. And prior to that with Roger. I don't think it's ever reached that amount. So for the individuals who are doing all the flying, we really appreciate it. It's kept us in the black. We actually finished off the year in the black, about $20,000 in the black for the rolling 12 months, and that's really been hard. I finally got the general off my back. I told it to him the other day. I said, "Boy, I tell you, you were hard on me." He said, "Well, we're trying to keep the club going." I said, "Well, you left," and I said, "Just be aware, for the last 5 months we've been in the black." Okay, how many sorties did we fly last month, or last year, fiscal year? Any guesses?
700.
No, we're between 12 and 7. Actually, 1,025, if I'm not mistaken. That's quite a few sorties. And just remember, out of all the landings that were in between there's probably about 3,000 to 4,000 landings in between. So when we look at wear and tear on tires, that's why we buy the monster tires, which are 11/32. We pay a few dollars more on the retreads. We try and remember that we try and keep the airplane centered on the center line so we don't scuff wheels. We've got some nose tires that are showing on one side some real flat spots. That should never happen. It's either because the rudder has been kicked into one spot and when it lands it starts sliding against the tire. Therefore we get flat spots. And what happens thereafter, it becomes continuously in that one spot when it starts to slide. So try and help us out in keeping the thing straight and let the nose down nice and softly while you still have control. Here's a question for everybody, since in the last 3 weeks we've had a lot of telephone calls. When does a flight warning show up on the flight service computer when a flight plan has not been closed?
30 minutes.
Close. The first one that comes up is a yellow warning issue, and it comes up at 20 minutes. When does the second one come up that turns red?
Where are these things that are turning?
These are all at flight service. This is the phone calls I'm getting, and I have to talk to Randy here. It's actually about 15 to 20 minutes afterwards, he gets a red thing, and that's when the phone call starts saying, hey guys, who hasn't closed their flight plan? So when I ask you to leave to close the flight plan, it should just take and write it on your checklist. So when you go through the end of the checklist and you get down to the very last item about securing the aircraft, put down, close your flight plan. I think we've had about a dozen in the last 2 months of close your flight plan from ATC. And I said, yep, that's the Aero Club again. So we're beginning to get a well-known name out of Prescott or wherever the phone call comes from because we're failing to take and close our flight plans.
Coming back here or out on the road?
Well, it doesn't make any difference. If I take and I file from here to Oceanside and then Oceanside back here, we should only be flying to Oceanside to close it. If I go from here to Hemet and I'm going to land and shut down, I'm going to close my flight plan. Don't try and put in a flight plan that says 4 hours, because that's impossible, you don't have enough gas. And I'm going to go to Hemet, and I'm going to go to French Valley, and I'm going to come back here to Riverside. It doesn't work. File to your destination, the first destination. If you look on the gouge in the back by the fax machine, you can actually lay down the additional flight plan from, we'll say, from Hemet to Thermal, if you're going to land at Hemet and shut down. And then when you get airborne, initiate that second one because it's already in the computer waiting for you to take and start that one back up. And if you're going to go from Thermal back to Riverside, which would be the third line that you've had on there, you can do the same thing. But don't try and put in, I'm going to go to Hemet, I'm going to go to Thermal, I'm going to put down 4.5 hours in a T-41A. It's not going to work. It doesn't work. So to take and relieve the phone calls back here to the Aero Club, file to your destination. You can always fly back into March. It's just like me. I go to Mojave. When we took 03 back up there, I closed my flight plan. I fly back into March and I call my 5 miles out and I'm headed for Box Springs, inbound March Aero Club, and this is my side number. And that keeps us legal.
Yeah, you do not have to file a flight plan to get back here in March as long as it's an Aero Club airplane.
That's right. So, am I clear with everybody to help us out a little bit? It's very easy to do. If you got some questions, we'll help you out when you come and file a flight plan. Okay? When I'm on the ground, and just prior to start, what should my manifold pressure read? I heard
Whatever the barometric pressure is reported.
That's true. So if the altimeter is 2992, it's going to read about 30. If it's 29888, it should be around 29 inches. Because there's no reduction in the manifold pressure due to the vacuum, or I should say differential pressure between the cylinders sucking it through the carburetor. I'm reading static pressure, which is what the altimeter is reading. If it's anything other than that, then we have an error in the instrument. So these are just little things, you know, that to think about and to help us out a little bit. It was kind of a fun thing for me to think about. But I want you to think about some of these other things for oil usage. Because if we're starting to get a lot of oil usage in one aircraft, I want to take and run an oil sample on that and I need to know how much oil is being used in a certain time frame for that particular engine to get the correct reading from the laboratories that come back and tell me how much metal that they're receiving out of that oil sample. So it's helping us out to keep us from having an engine failure. It's helping out the Aero Club in regards to how much oil we're using for cost, and it's helping you out to make sure you've got a safe airplane. So anyway, we got the coolers for the neck. When you leave, come up and grab one. I think I passed them out to a couple of them. Yes, Rich?
So on the flight plans, half the time when I go to close my flight plan at my destination airport, they say, "Who the hell are you?"
Yep.
That's because...
That's because they never opened the damn thing.
No, that's not true. Let me tell you what happens here. We have an Air Force regulation, which is a DD-175, and we have a flight plan system that's developed by the FAA. They're non-congruent, and this has been ongoing for almost 10 years between the Air Force and the people in Washington, D.C. trying to make something that's going to match the FAA. So when you leave here, under your flight plan, all they say that you basically have departed. It's not really a true flight plan. And when I say a true flight plan, even though we file a DD-175 and they'll send it, it's because of the DD-175 does not match the FAA flight plan that you can do.
But who opens it? Who's supposed to open it?
Well, what they do is they submit it. They'll take and they'll get in there and they submit it, and that's where it goes. They have no other option of doing anything else.
The only thing they send to the FAA is that you departed. That's it.
So
All I'm saying is, half the time, they don't even know I took off.
well,
But then 10 minutes later, they'll still be looking for you.
But sometimes it does work, and I go back, because I fly a lot to different places, they just don't put it in. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And how I head that off is when I call base ops, I just tell them, hey, please make sure you guys hand jam that in there because I'm gonna call.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, got it. It's a 50-50 shot, just like you
That's
say.
exactly right.
now Jason John, who has been flying an awful lot of time, with the club here over the last month and a half, he files directly with 1-800 weather brief. He files a flight plan. And he doesn't have much of an issue in regards to that. But I have filed, believe it or not, from March to Redlands, which is less than 10 minutes. Cleaned my wings, called him, got home. Within 45 minutes after I landed, I got a phone call. What happened? Where are you? And I said, well, you're the second call. I was talking to so-and-so on my flight plane closure. Oh, okay, we'll put it in there. My wife and I are at a restaurant an hour and a half later, and the phone rings and said, yes, you're the third phone call. Oh, I'm sorry, click. I'm just telling you how the system is working, and there's nothing much we can do about it.
All I'm saying is, we're not the only ones screwing up.
No.
Okay?
No, I understand that. And the issue on the flight plan, I haven't had much of an issue filing out of here, going to Amarillo, or filing in between. It always seems like somewhere along the line they catch up with me. But there's a lot of stuff that's local, that's within 50 miles or maybe 100 miles. I'm assuming it's probably going to Las Vegas or something like that with you. There is a big difference, and it's been in a big discussion when Chris Davis was here. I probably should take and bring that back up to Jim Morimoto and see if the staff can take and work with somebody to see why we're having those issues.
Yep.
But it really is not you. It's not you itself. It's the system. It's not working. And we've been ongoing with this for 11 years.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, Jim.
Are these IFR flight plans?
They're not IFR, that's
No,
one of the
VFR
things. It's
is
a
a
VFR flight following flight plan is what it amounts to. See, if I'm on an IFR flight plan, then it's mandatory because you're going to have a release, you're going to have a departure frequency, and et cetera, and already you're there in the system. But it seems like the VFR flight following is a lot of disparities in it. Okay, guys, I appreciate everybody coming out. And
Hold on one
good.
second. For next meeting's going to be a wings program, safety meeting. For those of you that are registered with wings, please, please, please pre-register, because it makes my job a lot easier. Otherwise, I have to input you in, and so just register for it, okay? Enough.
what those suckers